In today's show, we're talking 2021 NBA Draft with Richard from the Locked On NBA Draft podcast. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. We are here again. This is the 7th NBA Draft Prospect Show. We're joined by the 4th different host of the Locked On NBA Draft podcast. So let's bring him in right now. Richard Stayman of Locked On NBA Draft and, of course, MavsDraft over on Twitter. Welcome to the show.
Hey, appreciate you having me.
Good to have you here, Richard, and we're going to talk 6 prospects in today's show. We're going to be back tomorrow with another 6 prospects. Let's start with the guy who is thought to be a lock as a top 4 pick, maybe a lock as a top 3, maybe a lock as a top 2 pick, and that is Jalen Green, who played for the G League Ignite last season. 6'5" guard, averaged 18 points on 23% usage, really efficient stuff, great from the line. Hit his threes well, good shooting overall, 1.5 steals are nice, 18 points per game, pretty solid. Where do you have Green? Do you think there's any chance that he can challenge Cade as the number 1 pick? Do you have him as a lock for a top 4? What's your view on Jalen Green?
Yeah, so I think Cade is still the lock at number 1, but I don't see Jalen Green going past the 3rd pick. He's pretty much a lock to go top 3, whether it's 2 or 3. I personally have him number 6 on my board, which I understand is a controversial take, but he's still in that tier, the same tier with Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Kuminga, and James Bouknight. Yeah,
you say that's a controversial take, but I'll have controversial takes and I do draft stuff as well. And the thing to always remember is that when we look back in a year, 2 years, 3 years, the order of who's the best player is definitely not the order in which they were drafted. And there's always going to be someone in the top 3, another 2 guys in the top 6, another 3 guys in the top 10 who turn out to be not very good or turn out to be not worth that selection. It could be Green, it could be Suggs, it could be Mobley, it could be Cunningham. Like, who knows? One of those 4 may not pan out. That's just the way that stuff happens in the draft. So, yeah, you have your reasons for that. Let's hear those reasons. So why aren't you quite as high on him? Why is he down at number 6 in that same tier? But why don't you have him sort of separating like those others?
Yeah, so I think his jump shot is nice. It does need some work off the dribble. He also needs to get a little bit better as a ball handler. It's not broken, but it's also definitely needing polish. I think it got hidden a little bit in the NBA G League. And then also his defense is just a little bit subpar, especially if he's going to be guarding wings. He's going to be struggling in that front.
Do you think that there's a chance that those things, how high of a chance do you think those things have of coming to fruition, of him being a good defender? Because the steal rate's pretty good for the G League, but he's athletic. Does that always translate? Not necessarily. And the passing and the ball handling, can he become a guy that can run an NBA offense full time? Say like Bradley Beal came in as more of an off-ball shooter, and now he's more comfortable with the ball in his hands. Is that like upside type level for Green? Can he get to that level of a Beal where you don't want him to be a point guard, but if he is, I think things still go okay?
I don't think he will ever be a point guard. I think your best hope with him is being that secondary ball handler at times, but you probably want him to be looking to create for himself first and for his teammates second. That's probably his best role.
In terms of the shooting, he attempted almost 6 threes a game. He hit them at 37%. He hit his free throws at a high level. I guess the concern I have with the free throws is the lack of attempts, like just not getting to the line. That's somewhat of a concern. Only 2 attempts per game when he attempted almost 14 field goals. So that's a little bit of a concern. But is the 3-point shooting real? Can he be a 37% guy, or is he destined to be more of a higher volume, lower percentage player?
Yeah, somewhere in the middle. I mean, 37% was the league average this year from 3 in the NBA. So 37% is realistic. It's just more of a matter of when, I think, more than if. I don't know if he can ever be that volume guy at that percentage, though, like near 40%. That's kind of the question mark for him jumping into that top 3 value.
What do you make of the low free throw attempts? Because he's insanely athletic. We know that. He hits his free throws as a high rate. So it's not like he's Rajon Ronding or Ben Simmons-ing it and just like, I'm not getting there because he can't hit them. Yeah, why is the free throw attempt rate so low? Is he just not putting enough pressure on the rim? Is he settling for shots that obviously went in? But because we want these guys to be these lead ball handlers to be 7, 8 free throw attempts per game in their first 3 to 4 years to push up to that. And 2 attempts per game is a pretty low number.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. One, he's great at finishing around rim protectors and almost too good at it, where I think he was a little bit scared of contact to challenge those rim protectors and meet them at the rim. Even though he could win with his athleticism, he didn't always do it. But the other thing is, I know this is more of a theoretical thing, but the G League changed the process this year where it was 1 free throw for 2 shots, and that might be what it could be. So it might be like up to really 4, I guess, if you think about it, which isn't terrible, but I guess that would be more closer to the number of trips he had to the line, which is still underwhelming.
Yeah, okay. I actually forgot that rule in the G League, so that is important to know. And what you said about being too good of a finisher, I'm not saying these guys are the same player because they're not, but that brings me memories of early career Derrick Rose, who wouldn't draw free throws because he would just be able to get around those guys way too easily, and he would make it his mission to not actually draw it, to just try and avoid everything, and therefore he wouldn't take the free throws. Eventually that changed in his career a few years in, and we saw the free throw attempt rate go up. So maybe there's a little bit of that, a little bit of Derrick Rose there. Is there a player that you can compare his game to in the NBA?
It's hard to find a true comparison for him. Really, I mean, his role is, I would say, just a athletic potential 3-and-D guy. I mean, imagine, I guess the best way I could put it is the theoretical comparison of what was Gerald Green supposed to be. I hate using the last name Green. I didn't even realize what I did there. But you imagine what Gerald Green could have been. He was a freak athlete when he came into the league, pretty raw. If you kind of were high on him, then you should be high on him now. Okay. And I know there's better comparisons, but something like that. I mean, they're very similar wings.
All right. Let's actually, before we move on to talk about the next player, Richard, I got to ask you a question. Do you ever look to fix your own car? Or are you like me and just completely useless at it?
Useless.
Yes, exactly. But if you are one of those people who is a do-it-yourselfer, Rock Auto is the place for you to go. With ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all of the parts you need. Why would you endure often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and right in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto, and why would you choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, right? Locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. All right, let's go on to the next player on our list here, and this is a guy that some people may not have even heard of, to be honest, and that is, now I'm going to mispronounce this, I reckon, Roko Prkacin. What was that?
You want me to do it for you?
No, I'm going to have a go and you can grade it because I need to learn this. It's Roko Prkacin.
Very close. It's Roko Prkacin. Very close, though.
Prkacin. Okay, all right. So let's talk about Prkacin. Then he is a 6'9" forward who is extraordinarily young still. He's only 18. So some of these guys coming out, Cunningham, Mobley, they're 20 already. He's 18. He played for Sabona over in Europe, averaged 13 points with 7 boards, 50% from the field, a troublingly low 62% from the line, but 25% usage. Even looking at that picture of him there, you can see how young he actually looks. I don't know how best to describe him. He's a guy where you look at him and go, okay, he's a white guy, European shooter, but he's not, is he? Like that's not what his game is.
Right. So I think actually his shooting is probably the biggest area of improvement for him because his jump shot follow through is just not very clean. So when that improves, his upside is going to be limitless. You can tell by the 2 assists a game, and the European stats don't get to, show off all these guys' full skill sets like a lot of the American programs do. But I think, he's got great passing feel, can really understand pick and rolls and passing angles in general. And he's just really versatile. He can guard 5s, a little bit difficult for him to guard some post-minded 5s, but he's got the ability to play the whole front court on both ends.
He's also a pretty explosive player. Well, 7 rebounds as a 6'9" forward is not a bad number in Europe, playing just 26 minutes a night. Good finishing numbers, but he's got some real bounce, got some real pop and explosion as well. So he's not a slow-footed player, I guess.
Yeah, no, he's got decent lateral quickness. It's enough to pass by in the league, so that's not really too much of an area of concern.
So what's his best position in the NBA? Is it playing as a 4? Is it more of a wing? Like what's his sort of positional versatility?
I think you play him at power forward, and you either move him up in the lineup or you keep him at that power forward, so he can be a small ball 5, or just play perfectly next to another big man and get the big man some easy buckets and even help him on the defensive end.
So is he a guy that we have any confidence in that shot coming along? Like, it's obviously not quite there now, just the 30-odd% 3-point shooter. Do we have confidence in that, or is that low free throw percentage not necessarily a nail in the coffin, but not a great sign at this stage?
So my biggest concern with him and his shot is that his hand placement's very awkward. It's never consistent. It's sometimes on the right side of the ball, sometimes in the middle, and sometimes on the left, which is just not what you want as a shooter. And he needs to speed up his jump shot. He can't shoot over contests. So I think those are 2 areas where he really has to make a lot of strides to improve in that front.
So his number one skill, would you say it's his passing?
I would say it's his passing and just overall basketball IQ, honestly.
Okay, so it's just sort of one of those guys that, again, just plays winning basketball, makes the right play, but has that shooting deficit. Like, where would you, when I look at a guy like that who's got this basketball IQ and winning play type mentality, obviously this guy's not the same defender as who I'm going to talk about. But in terms of comparing him to, say, a Scotty Barnes, is that like IQ level and passing? Is he like, how far behind Barnes is he there?
He's pretty close. I wish I could do draft cross like comparisons in this draft, because he is very similar to Franz Wagner if he had a jump shot.
Okay, so so that's interesting, because all those guys are Barnes has been talked about maybe we're going to talk about Scotty Barnes tomorrow as a top 5, top 6 type pick, and you got Wagner as a top 10 guy with Prkacin not quite at that level, but if you are falling into that back end teens is probably the right spot to get him. Is that the area you think that he should be drafted?
Yeah, I think he's looking at like 18 to anywhere late 20s. I don't see him lasting to 30 though.
I would be pretty shocked if he lasted to 30 personally. In my I'm just going to go back and check in my last mock where I had him, because I think I had him where is it? Yeah, I had him at number 14, so I jumped him up a little bit into that last mock draft, which I'm really doubtful he goes that high, but there is some real ability. Is he ever got that? Do you think he's got that upside to be fringe all-star, sub all-star level, or will he just be just a really useful, solid player?
Yeah, I think he's probably going to be a reliable rotation player is the realistic outcome.
Let's go on to the next guy, and we're going to move to an American player this time. We're going to look at Trey Murphy out of Virginia. 6'9", Murphy, a guy that played. I think he began at Rice, didn't he?
Yep. Yeah, transferred into Virginia from Rice.
Yeah, so 3-year college player, Trey Murphy, now playing for Virginia, or played for Virginia last year, 30 minutes a game. He averaged 11 points. He hit 2 threes at 43%, and he's over 40% in his college career across those 3 seasons. He hit 93% of his free throws as well. Really low usage guy. 11 and 3 with 1 assist and 0.8 steals. They're pretty low numbers, but as a shooter, he is right up there in this class. Like, is he a top 3 shooter in this class?
Yeah, I mean, he almost has to be, right? 50, 40, 90 in college is just so unprecedented that even though he does have like some weird form and potentially issues shooting off the dribble, he's still a top 3 shooter in the class just from how lethal he is as a standstill shooter.
And he's big. Like, he's 6'9", which, as a guy that's a guard with a big wingspan, like, that's obviously the ability to get shots off over a bunch of these smaller players that are playing him. Is he likely to play more as a 3 though in the NBA?
Yeah, I think you put him as a small forward, and depending on the lineup, you can probably move him into a small ball 4, and then even probably can guard regular 4s, to be honest. And then you can play him down to shooting guards if for whatever reason you need to go bigger and have more shooting. He can play pretty much 2 through 4.
Has he got any ability to handle the ball or to pass or to make basic reads or anything like that? Or is he just really just a shooter at this point?
I think he's mostly a shooter. He's almost a liability when he puts the ball on the floor, which is a concern. I think you just want him out there to be a gravity guy, like where the teams just have to respect him off ball.
So he's got the measurements to be a good defender. 7-foot wingspan, 6'9", potentially guarding some smaller players or wings or guarding up to the 4. Is he a good defender?
Yeah, outstanding defender. Definitely a 3-and-D guy. He's going to be able to guard multiple positions, and he's got the athleticism to stick with wings.
So we talk about him being this elite shooter, this guy that can defend multiple positions, a bit of a downside in terms of ball handling and passing and that sort of stuff. But so talk about that player. That to me, it sounds like a top 12, top 15 sort of a guy, but he probably won't go in that area. So what would be holding him back from being that higher draft pick? Because that level of shooting paired with defensive ability is something that all NBA teams are looking for, really.
I think it speaks volumes to the depth of this class. This class has a lot of guys that you could say the top 20 are probably almost all lottery level talents any other year. If you put him in last year's class, he's safely a lottery pick. But the limited, shooting and defense, it's kind of what he's going to do. I think it's going to scare teams off. And as they want, these high ceiling guys, he just isn't that.
Because he is, 21, I think now. He's had 3 years in college. He's still got some of that development, but can he come in? Like, I know it's a trope to say that, 3 and 4 year college players are NBA ready, but is he NBA ready? Because lots of those guys are nowhere near NBA ready, but is he NBA ready?
I think his transition is actually even easier just because of how little he does outside of the 2 things he does at such a high level. So I would say he's NBA ready for sure.
Yeah, that's the impression I get. A guy that can come in, maybe like compared to a couple of years ago, say like a Cam Johnson, an older shooting player. Like, where do you view him there? Because Johnson was able to come in and have somewhat of an impact straight away. Is he at that sort of level?
I think he could be. Cam Johnson improved a lot as a defender from college to the NBA, which is something not a lot of people saw coming. So if Cam Johnson can do that, and he's also improved some of his passing, and he was 24 when he came into the league. So I think if Cam Johnson can do it, there's no reason to believe that Trey Murphy can't. And that's actually a good comparison for him.
Let's, before we move on to the next player, I've got to tell you about Bet Online, because that is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your sports action. Baseball season, it's in full swing, and you can track all of that action over at Bet Online and get all of the latest news, odds, and info for all of your sporting needs. So before that next pitch, head over to Bet Online on your laptop or mobile device and check out all of the great sporting news, sign-up bonuses, and contest information. Don't sit on the sidelines anymore, as this is your chance to get into the game as teams prep for their runs to the playoffs. Head to the website or use your mobile device to use our promo code LOCKEDON and sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline are your online sportsbook experts. Well, speaking about Cam Johnson being 24, let's talk about Chris Duarte, who is a 24-year-old guard, 6'6", out of Oregon, average 17 points per game, 2.5 threes per game, average almost 5 boards, shot amazingly. We talk about great shooters here. 53% from the field, 81% from the line, a 66% true shooting. He hit 42% of his threes. Is Murphy or Duarte a better shooter?
That's a tough question. I think I go Chris Duarte just because he can shoot off the dribble a lot better.
So, at 6'6", he's got decent size. Obviously the shooting's fantastic, and you're mentioning shooting off the dribble. Pull-up threes is one of the skills that's so hard to develop and be a good shooter in that area. But in the NBA, is he a guy that you will put the ball in his hands? Will he be ever a guy that runs as a point guard, or is he going to be a strictly off-ball sort of a player?
Probably primarily off-ball, but he's also going to be that guy who you can trust him to handle the ball. It's just he's not the first option to run the offense, but he's capable of doing it.
Has he got starter upside?
I think he does, just because of what he brings to the table. That basketball IQ, he can finish at the rim, 3-level scoring, and defense. I mean, his defense is probably one of the better traits for any guard in the class. He forces turnovers. He can stay in front of his man despite being a limited athlete. So there's a lot that he brings to the table that it just adds to winning basketball, and that makes him a starting caliber player.
So if we're going to nitpick here, well, not necessarily nitpick, but he had a circuitous route, I guess, to getting here, play with Northwest Florida State College for 2 years, and even last year at Oregon, only shot 34% from 3. So is this a case of an outlier shooting season? I don't think it is, but that junior year shooting is a little bit troublesome, and he hit under 80% from the line that season. The fact that he is 24 and he's going up against 18 and 19-year-olds and dominating there, whereas in previous seasons he wasn't quite at that level, is that gives some warning bells to me, some slight red flags. Is that a concern to you that really it came as he was 24 that he was able to put up these numbers?
It doesn't worry me too much. I'm pretty sure, I think last year, the 2019-20 season was the first year the NCAA extended the line. They moved it back a little bit.
Yep.
So I think that could have been an issue for him, and then he just adapted this year. I think that's probably more likely the case. So I'm not too worried about it being an outlier. His form is good, so nothing too concerning.
He feels like he's going to be a first-round pick, Duarte, in most situations, going to one of those teams in the 20s who need players to come in and be shooters, the Clippers, the Lakers, they're names that really seem to stand out. Is that the area you've got him in the draft, in that, say, 20 to 26 type area?
So I actually think he could go before pick 20, just because, he sat out the combine, which usually means he gets a promise. I could see him going in right after the lottery, 15 to 20.
Okay, so the teams we're looking at there, you got the Wizards. You wouldn't go to the Thunder, but maybe Memphis, maybe the Knicks in that area, the Hawks perhaps.
The Hawks would be an outstanding fit. I mean, that's probably the best guy to make up for Trae Young's defense, for example.
Yeah, and like their point guard depth, who knows what happens with Lou Williams there? Getting someone in to be that backup point guard. It's a pretty interesting situation if he was able to find himself there. You say defense, can he guard multiple positions?
I think he's probably pretty limited to ones and twos, maybe some threes, but you're probably wanting him on shooting guards and point guards.
All right, so let's move now on to the next guy on our list for this show, and we're looking at Aaron Henry, a 6'6" forward, 21 years of age, from Michigan State. He averaged 15 points per game. He hit about a 3 per game. Really good steal and block numbers. Overall efficiency not particularly good, 52 true shooting, 27% usage for Aaron Henry. Again, played 3 years in college and really did step it up this season. But unfortunately, he went from a 39% shooter from 3 as a freshman down to a 30% shooter as a junior. Improved his free throws over that time, but which one's the real Aaron Henry? Is it the guy that can hit them at a decent to average rate, or someone who struggled significantly like this season?
Yeah, I think the jump shot is probably something I'm more down on than most people on draft Twitter. I don't think he necessarily needs it, though. He's not probably going to be league average ever from 3 in his career. I'd be a little bit surprised. But he's so athletic and runs a pick and roll for a wing. Those are very needed traits. And he's a high IQ, skilled defender. And he needs to finish at the rim. But I think having that combination keeps you in the league as a rotation player. You need a stopper on the wings at all times. I don't see why he can't get better as, even if he's just slightly below average as a shooter. I think that really helps given his skill set. Yeah,
so what he is that high-level defender who handles the ball. You probably don't ever want him to be the guy that is running everything on your offense, but I guess if we go back to Atlanta again, the way that they use Kevin Huerter at times as that sort of wing ball handler creator. Obviously, Henry is projecting to be a better defender than what Huerter is, and a significantly worse shooter just in terms of ball handling and creation out on the wing. He can be that guy. Is there any? Would you have him as a first round grade? Or is he more of a second rounder?
I would take him early second. But that's not really a knock on him. Again, just kind of the depth of this class where there's safer picks, and it's hard to take a wing without a jump shot, a reliable jump shot, so that is going to knock him down.
Yeah, that is interesting. And that's always the case. As the further you go down the draft, there's always these red flags or big holes in the game that you do worry about. And getting that shot right, look, you'd hope he can get back to his freshman numbers, although that was on such limited attempts, like 1-3 per game. So it's really hard to, you read too much of that. He only took 39 attempts in that freshman year, whereas he was 90 and 81 in each of the last 2 seasons after that. So that is a level of concern. And then the last guy we're going to talk about on today's show, we're going back over to Europe, and I don't know, let's try my pronunciation on this one. I've never heard this one said out loud. Juhann Bagaran from, is that good?
That's good.
Awesome. 6'5" guard, 18 years of age, played for Paris over in Europe, averaged 12 points, 3.5 boards, 3 assists, poor free throw shooting, overall 55% true shooting, good athleticism as a guard. Tell us a little bit about Begarin.
Yeah, so he's a power guard. He gets to his spots. He can create his shot, loves the behind the back step back. But he does need to improve his shooting. The free throw percentage is low. I think he shot in the mid 20s for the year as a 3-point shooter. So really needs to get better at that and just improving his turnovers. He throws a lot of passes away because he goes for those home run plays. So if he tones it down and plays under control a little bit more, it's going to come together for him.
He actually, this year, he stepped it up to 34% from three. He was at 29 last season, and 22 the year before that. So, obviously, 21 the year before that. So, obviously, he's had some absolutely shithouse shooting performances. But this year was able to step it up a little bit. But the fact that he's such a bad free throw shooter as well makes you think that perhaps the 3-point shooting this year isn't 100% real. Is he a draftable prospect?
I think you take him in the second round, especially if you're trying to save money and you don't need him to come over right away. Let him stay over in Paris and see what he can do because he's so young. And as he continues to refine those turnovers, I think that's probably the first step for him. That's going to go a long way in developing him in the NBA.
So is he a 2 or a 1 or a 3 even?
I have him as a combo guard.
Okay. So he's got the size. He's 6'5". We talk about European assist numbers. He averaged almost 3 per game as an 18-year-old in the French league, which is a pretty good number. So what is that passing like? Can he run pick and roll?
Yeah, he's pretty good at running the pick and roll. His biggest issue is just not becoming predictable. He sometimes can make it very clear where he's going out of the pick and roll, but he has the right idea. He just telegraphs it. He stares his man down, things like that. And I think as he uses his eyes a little bit better to deflect the defenders, that'll go a long way. Like that's a simple first step into fixing that.
So yeah, again, more of a prospect sort of guy that you're probably going to stay in Europe for a couple of years, but someone interesting with that level of athleticism and some passing acumen there, but working on that shot is going to be key. And let's see if he can continue the upward trend that we saw from Bagaran this year, where he did take that 3-point shooting up a little bit. Richard, we'll leave it there for today's show. Tell everybody where they can find you, your podcast, Twitter, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I do Locked On NBA Draft every Tuesday. Do audio scouting reports on top of the written scouting reports I've been doing at MavsDraft on Twitter.
So go and follow Richard over there, but make sure you are also subscribing to the Locked On NBA Draft show. Also, follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. But if you're here on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give it a thumbs up, leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.